make sausage, are you having a hard time with tough and chewy casings? I can't tell you how many times this issue gets brought up. It's quite possibly one of the biggest issues that home sausage makers have with their end result. They bite into it, it's tough and chewy. And people always ask, what can I do to make my sausage nice and snappy, right? Such a pleasant eating experience when you bite into a casing. It's very tender, it's very snappy. Well, in a previous video, we talked about a lot of different techniques that you can implement through the sausage making process that contribute to a snappy casing. And if you haven't seen that video, I'll put a video suggestion for it right here and at the end of this video. We're not going to go over those techniques. Today, we're going to talk about a single technique that directly influences the tenderness of the casing. And we've never really talked about it here on this channel before. It's a highly misunderstood topic, and I don't always do it. So in today's video, we're going to take a closer look at the technique of adding lemon juice to your water when you soak casings. We're going to look at the science behind it, how it works, why it works, when I do it, when I don't do it. At the end of this video, we're actually going to do a sausage test where we have a couple different examples of some with lemon juice, some without lemon juice, so that you could see the results firsthand. And hopefully by the end of this video, you'll know whether or not this is something that you should be implementing in your sausage making process. Let's get started.
All right, what we have here is casings from a couple different suppliers. This one I got locally, and you're going to notice a huge difference in the way that they look. And so let me just put them into a bowl, and then we'll compare those to these other casings that I got from the sausage maker. Now, I'm not saying that the sausage maker has perfect casings 100% of the time, but they do tend to be a higher quality casing than the ones I get locally. And you're going to notice just right off the bat, before we do anything, a huge difference between the two casings. We're making probably 150 pounds of different varieties of sausage here, and I thought this would be a great opportunity to demonstrate what we're talking about. So not sure if you could tell the difference between the two casings. We are going to give them a rinse so that it does become a little more apparent. So give me 1 second, I'll be right back, and here we go. Just rinsed and flushed, cool water. Now, can you tell the difference? We've got one set of casing that has almost like a khaki color, a little bit of a brown looking color to it. When I put my fingers into the casing, they have an opaque quality. Can you see that? Now, it's not completely opaque, but it's definitely opaque. And then when I give them just a little feel, they feel thick. It's tough to describe, but they have a thicker feel to it. Over here on the right, notice that the casing is very white, snow white, and when I put my fingers into this one, it has more of a translucent quality about it. Very white looking casing. And let's do side by side so that you can see the two next to each other. Notice the difference? A lot of factors can contribute to the slightly thicker walled tinted casing. The white casing, we're not going to have to do anything to. I'm just going to soak that in water overnight. These are premium casings. At this stage, I know that I'm going to get a very nice, snappy bite. Whereas the ones on the left, on the other hand, this casing that I got from a local supplier, I can almost guarantee that this is going to deliver a sausage with a tough and chewy bite. So what we're going to do is we're going to separate a little piece of that casing. Feels a little thicker, it's a bit opaque. We're going to put it in a cup of water, set it to the side. We're not going to do anything to it. Regarding the rest of the casings,
let's talk about what's going on with these casings. One of the key components to casings is collagen. It's a fibrous protein that forms a complex, multi-layered network in the submucosa layer of the intestines. And there's a lot of things that can affect these protein structures. The way the collagen fibers are formed in the intestines, or in our case, the casings. You know, the diet of the pig, the age of the pig. So for instance, if you have a younger pig, the fibers tend to be more open. Where if you have an older pig, those fibers tend to be a little bit tighter. Hence, casings taken from younger pigs tend to be more tender, super snappy, while casings that are taken from older pigs tend to be a little bit more tough. The liquid that we soak our casings in when we're rehydrating, so it's usually just water, has a pH. Normally it's somewhere between 6.5 and 8, something like that, usually in that 7 range. Well, that pH directly impacts the structure and the interaction of these collagen fibers. The isoelectric point of the collagen in these casings is somewhere between 7.2 and 7.8. Different forms of collagen have different isoelectric points. It can go down to 5. And anyway, for these casings, it's around 7.2 to 7.8. What's the isoelectric point? I'm glad you asked. The isoelectric point is the pH where the molecules, the cells, have no electrical charge and solubility is at a minimum. And so if something is at its isoelectric point, it wants to expel moisture rather than absorb it. Does that make sense? So, when we make salami, one of the big reasons that we ferment, not only because of safety, but it's to get to the isoelectric point of meat so that we can expel the moisture from the cells. We can talk about that in a completely different video. Anyway, we're going to take the pH of this water here in just a minute and see how it relates to the isoelectric point of these casings, because as we move that pH around, we can start to manipulate these casings on a molecular level and hopefully get more predictable results. For instance, when we start to lower the pH of the soaking solution, the protein chains start to develop a net positive surface charge. So remember, at isoelectric point, you're at net zero, no electrical charge, solubility is at a minimum. All the cells at the isoelectric point are wanting to expel moisture, but as we lower the pH, we now have a net positive surface charge, so solubility starts to increase. The collagen fibers are now in a place where they could start to absorb water. And as they absorb water, they start to swell. And when they swell, they loosen that fibrous network that was formed, increasing the water retention of the casing. So as we drop the pH of our soaking solution, we now have a casing that over the course of, 8 to 12 hours is beginning to relax. It's not so tightly wound up. It's not all bound together through these collagen fibers, giving us a more tender casing. There are other benefits of dropping the pH of your soaking solution. It increases the flexibility of your casing, also the stretchability of your casing as well. But there are limits. If your pH is too low in your soaking solution, you're going to have things happen that are just unfavorable to what we're trying to accomplish. The fibers start to open up even more. They start to absorb even more moisture, and they become very, very fragile. So much so that you'll have casing blowouts like crazy. Perhaps even the weight of the sausage won't be sustained by the casing when you go to hang them. And so we need to stay in a very specific range in order to not have any of that stuff happen. All right, so we're going to take the pH of the water. We're going to add some lemon juice, take the pH again so that you know what the right range is. But you don't need a pH meter for this. I'm going to tell you, how many teaspoons per quart of water that you use. That'll get you within that range, and it'll be absolutely perfect.
All right, let's start off by taking the pH of the soaking solution currently. Now remember, the isoelectric point of the casing is between 7.2 and 7.8, and currently the water is measuring at 7.16. All right, so at this point, we're at the isoelectric point of these casings, and we're going to add some lemon juice to acidify or lower the pH of the water to open up those collagen fibers. Right now, we're adding about 1.5 teaspoons, and we've got 2 quarts of water. So basically, you would add 1 tablespoon of lemon juice or vinegar to 1 gallon of water if you plan on making a lot. The pH range that we're trying to stay between is going to be 3.5 to 5.5. When you start to get below 3, that's where you start to run into problems. Ideally, you're going to want to add your acid to your water before you add your casings, but for whatever reason, I chose not to do that, and I'm just very gently mixing this so I don't knot up all my casings. But we have 1.5 teaspoons of lemon juice in 2 quarts of water. Everything's now properly incorporated, and now we're going to retest the pH and see where we're at. And remember, the range we're looking to stick between is 3.5 and 5.5, and it looks like our pH is at 3.8. And so this is absolutely perfect. At this pH, we can let our casing soak overnight, and we're not going to have a single problem. And if you have a pH meter, that's great, but if you don't, just remember, for every quart of water, add 3/4 of a teaspoon of an acid, whether it be lemon juice or vinegar. You can even add pineapple juice if you'd like. This soaking solution that we just created is going to let our casings absorb more water than normal. All right, here's our 3 casings. We're going to put these in the refrigerator overnight and get back to you tomorrow where we're going to fill them with our Texas bowl of chili sausage. It's now the next day, so about 14 hours have passed, and right off the bat, I can tell you that just feeling the casing, they feel thinner. So this is the white casing. We've done nothing to. It's just soaked in water overnight. We're going to set that to the side. These right here, like I was saying, they have a different feel to them. Notice that they do look more translucent, and they definitely have a softer, thinner feel to them. So that's just soaking with a little bit of lemon juice. This one right here, we've done nothing to. That's kind of the control. This was that opaque casing, only soaked in water. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and fill all these up with our Texas bowl of chili recipe. Link in the description box below if you want to check out that recipe. First, we're doing the control. That's just that one link. And then we're going to do the ones that was soaked in lemon juice. And then we're going to finish with the white translucent casings, where we've done nothing but soak in water. And one question you might have for me right now is, Eric, how do you know which casings are going to be tender and which casings are going to be tough and chewy? Well, honestly, at the end of the day, experience has a lot to do with that. You know, when you make thousands of pounds of sausage, eventually you're going to figure out, hey, which casings produce a tender bite and which ones tend to be chewy. And generally, and I'm talking like 90% of the time, at least in my experience, casings that have a yellow or brown tint, they tend to be opaque. They have a thicker wall whenever you touch them after they've been soaking for a minute. There may even be fatty deposits on the casing itself. Those, in my experience, tend to be more tough. We're now going to stuff that final casing. This is the Snow White casing. We've done nothing but soak this in water. Okay, and what leads to that? You know, what's the difference? Well, you know, the source of origin, you know, depending on where the casings come from. They come from China, they come from North America, how they were prepared, how they were cleaned, the age of the pig, the diet of the pig, all of those play a factor. The trick is being able to recognize it and then do something about it. We're now finished, and wow, what a beautiful looking sausage there. We're going to put it into our smoker. Got about 30 pounds of the Texas bowl of chili. Make sure we got plenty of space. This is the convection smoker from Smokin-It Smoker. Check out their website if you want to jump on their Black Friday sale. I'll put a link in the description. So let me show you what we've got. The first 2 rows, I'm using the casing that was opaque but soaked in lemon juice. The back 2 rows, that's the Snow White casing, only soaked in water. And then, of course, we have our control right here. This was the opaque casing, only soaked in water. Okay, same recipe, 3 different preparations of casings. We're going to close this down. They're all going to cook at the same temperature at the same time. And when they're done, we're going to give them a taste. About 4.5, 5 hours later, nice low and slow cook on these bowl of chili sausage. Let's take a look at what we're working with. Okay, so here we go. This is the translucent casing, Snow White, came from the sausage maker, only soaked in water. This one is the one I got locally, a bit opaque with a yellowish brown tint to it, soaked with water and lemon juice. And then, of course, this one, that was taken from the same batch of the opaque casing, but we only soaked it in water. So let's start with the control and see how it turned out.
Texas bowl of chili sausage, by all accounts, it looks like a perfect sausage. Great color, tight casing. We even got a little cheese sweeping out right there at the very bottom. It's a beautiful recipe, and if you want to know how to make the Texas bowl of chili, I'll put a link in the description box below. Larry Capigian creation right here. Oh, it smells incredible. All right, let's just go in for a bite. Here it comes. Bowl of chili. Okay. The casing, I don't want to be gross. I feel like pulling it out just so you could see it, but I'm still chewing on the casing. Almost like it's a piece of bubble gum. All right, we're going to take another bite. And I will say that the initial bite into the sausage, a little bit of a toughness to it. It wasn't as tender as I would prefer. Really, where this casing showed itself was on the chew. It was very rubbery. It kind of hung around a little bit. And that, to me, is just not a very pleasant sausage eating experience. So let's go in for another bite here. Texas bowl of chili. Just chewing on it, you know? You eventually break it down, but it should be pretty crispy. It should be very tender. It shouldn't be the thing that you notice outside of its tenderness or snappiness, right? You shouldn't be like, wow, that casing is super chewy. That takes away from the sausage. Notice right here, we've got some sausage casing that's kind of sticking up on the side. That's where it had to rip instead of snap. And so, okay, boy, that's a tasty sausage though, I gotta admit. Even with the casing being the way that it is, I mean, just look at this. This is just absolutely amazing. Great recipe. All right, we're now gonna try the other casing that we just soaked in water. Now this casing presented itself as being very white. It didn't have a yellow tint, no brown or khaki color. When we put our fingers in it, very translucent, indicating that it had a very thin wall. So we only soaked this in water overnight. This soaked for about 14 hours in the refrigerator, much like the other ones did as well. All right, quick bite. Here we go. That's amazing. Did you get that? Very snappy. That's the classic smoked sausage eating experience. Snappy casing. Incredible. One more bite. All right. Final test. Sausage number 3. And woo, let me tell you, it's got this beautiful, spicy, creamy, cheesy flavor, this Texas bowl of chili. Our final test is the casing that had a yellow tint to it. When we put our fingers in the casing, it was opaque, much like this one, okay? Now, the only difference is that we added lemon juice to this guy right here. That was it. This one right here, you already saw, a little tough on the bite, definitely very chewy when you ate it. So let's see if this one right here presents any different. Here we go. Wow. That's how it should be every single time. One more bite. Snappy, absolutely amazing. Now the recipe is the recipe. You can use whatever recipe you want. What we're looking at solely is the quality of the casing. So what do we do with this? Well, I think the goal of every sausage maker is to produce a high quality sausage with a certain level of repeatability. You don't want to make an amazing sausage one day, beautiful recipe, super snappy, and then make that exact same recipe on a different day only for it to be ruined by a tough and chewy casing. And that brings us to the heart of the matter, the quality of the casing. In today's experiment, the recipe was the same, the filling was the same, the only difference was the quality of the casing. The casing that was translucent didn't have to do anything to, just soaked it, turned out a beautiful snappy bite. And that's usually my experience with those types of casings. But the one that was opaque, the one that had a yellow, almost kind of like a brownish khaki tint to it, benefited from a little acid, a little lemon juice. It doesn't have to be lemon juice. It could be pineapple juice, actually. It could be vinegar. It doesn't really matter all that very much. But it benefited from a slightly lower pH soak. And the difference between that casing and the one that was unsoaked, same casing, one was tough, one was tender. So for me, I don't add an acid every time I make sausage, just because sometimes it's not necessary. If I have really good quality casings, I don't need to. I'll just let them soak and do their thing. But it will not hurt if you do add an acid. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at. And so if you just want to play it safe and turn out a nice snappy casing, no questions asked, go ahead and make the acid addition. Let your casing soak overnight. You got to have an overnight soak so that the molecular, transformation can start to happen. And then the next day you should be able to turn out a sausage that's pretty incredible. One final thought, and I may be answering a question you already have. If an acid tenderizes the casing, what about an alkaline? Well, the answer is yes. Remember, the isoelectric point, in this case, 7.3 to 7.8, give or take, as we move away from that, either higher or lower, you start to affect the way the molecules act. So we're able to affect the molecules by lowering the pH, absorbing some moisture, loosening that structure. You do the exact same thing when you increase the pH. So you may say, well, what about baking soda, right? You see me use baking soda in our soaking solution, and while we're technically alkalinizing the water, baking soda is a pretty weak base. It has a pH of around 8.2, 8.3, and so even if you add a lot of baking soda to your water, really the highest pH you're going to get to is 8.7, 8.8, something like that. So the reason we add baking soda is to make the water slipperier, more slippery, to make the casing slide on and off the horn easier, to undo knots if you get knots inside your casing. It's absolutely perfect for that. But when it comes to tenderizing your casing, from my experience, the pH needs to be a little bit higher, and baking soda alone just doesn't get you there. You would need a stronger base to get you above that 9 pH, which really is going to do what the acid does. All right, guys, I know we covered a lot of stuff today. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. Look, at the end of the day, if you're not sure, you can add a little bit of lemon juice. It's very popular in Europe. You see Italians actually put slices of lemon in their soaking water. Nobody ever really talks about the science behind it, but that's exactly why they do it. And it's absolutely brilliant. It's going to give you very predictable results, which is what we're looking for, especially if you have a home sausage making business, right? You want to turn out amazing products. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. If you're not currently subscribed and you enjoy this type of content, hit that subscribe button and that notification bell. We'll see you in the next one. Now I'm going to dive into a Texas bowl of chili sausage. Here we go.